Merry Octoberween, my beautiful children. It's officially time to celebrate and appreciate all things spooky. Costumes, makeup, weird looking foods, and the works dominate the month, and I'm personally a huge fan of all of it. If you didn't know, Halloween is my personal favorite holiday in the entire year. However, there are two other things that tend to be extremely popular during the season, and you already know what they are: spooky movies and spooky games. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably rock solid while watching a horror movie, but then suddenly turn into a little baby boy or girl whilst experiencing a really good solid horror game. There's definitely a question to be asked as to why that is, but that's not exactly the point of the video. Best I could try to sum it up is that when you're watching a movie, there's a very specific set of events that are going to take place in a very specific way every time, no matter what happens. On the other hand, with a game, there's always some sort of variable that makes your experience at least incrementally unique from someone else's. Now, that's not to say that every horror game is legitimately scary or gets the job done. There's plenty of stinkers out there that completely fail to accomplish whatever goal they're going for, like The Inpatient or Alone in the Dark Illumination. It's almost like a scary game is supposed to actually be scary, at least one way or another. There aren't exactly rules as to what dictates whether or not something is scary. Art is always subjective. However, I think I could try to highlight or at least identify the most key factors that I've seen. These factors, I believe, determine if a game either express delivers some chills directly to your spine or loses the package somewhere along the way. And I'll tell you what they are right after this ad. Now, any truly effective horror game has a combination of two or even all three of the factors I'm about to lay out to you. But I think that it all comes down to the feeling of helplessness, the dread of inevitability, and the fear of the unknown. Now, some examples of each of these would probably be helpful so that you know what I'm trying to say. Games like Outlast, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and Soma are all very good at creating an environment where you, both as a player and as a character, have essentially no combat or defense skills, and so your only option is to run and hide when the big bad spooks come your way. However, even Amnesia stands out in this way because the longer you hide, the more sanity you begin to lose over time, and if you run out of sanity, that's just about game over. So you have to come out and play eventually. These games excel at making the situation feel defeatist and like you can't do anything. That's what makes them special. Alternatively, there are games like Five Nights at Freddy's or Inside, where you know that at some point something bad is going to happen. FNAF is special in this way because the measure of the inevitable is an ever-decreasing power supply that starts at 99% and no matter what, is always losing percentage as the night goes on. When you play the game for the first time, you know that at some point you will run out of power and potentially lose the game. And even if you're a professional with a perfect strategy like Markiplier, the power is going to always be draining. Even in Sister Location, a game with no power system whatsoever, you get the feeling that eventually your character is going to meet with a terrible fate because the series at this point is known for that sort of thing. And with Inside, there's something about the atmosphere of the game that creates a sense that regardless of what you do in this largely on rails game, it's just going to end very poorly for your little guy. Could be that I was given an unfair advantage by having played Limbo, but I think even a newcomer would have a very similar feeling, especially as you approach the game's climax. Lastly, we have the unknown, which in truth every good horror game should have at least a sliver of if it's going to be effective. However, some games thrive off of it. The classic Resident Evil games, Silent Hill 2, Dead Space, and one of my personal favorites, Alien Isolation, all excel at giving you this tremendous fear of what could be around the corner, especially Dead Space. The first time you see that tentacle in action, if you're anything like me, you probably spent the entire rest of your time anxiously waiting to either see it again, or see what it's attached to on the other end. Alien Isolation, it's pretty clear that you're dealing with a xenomorph run amok, but there's also hostile humans and androids crawling about the Sevastopol. At any point, something that wants to kill you could be around the corner, and maybe you don't have any ammo, or flamethrower fuel, or noisemakers that you don't know how you're going to get out of the situation. Silent Hill 2's most well-known feature, Pyramid Head, is basically an unstoppable guilt machine that appears at random, and you don't always know what you're supposed to do about. Resident Evil 2, I think we all know what I'm going to say. There's a certain Mister who just likes to appear, at least in the original game. In the remake, you typically have a pretty good idea where he is most of the time. Now, the main takeaway from this that I want you all to understand is that there's more than one way to instill fear in someone who's consuming your content, whether it be a novel, a short film, or an indie game. There are multiple avenues and nearly infinite techniques you can employ that can transport a person into the world you're creating for them. This largely applies to creators out there, but I'm sure there's plenty of them here. I'm sure that you understand that when I say there are different factors when it comes to creating a terrifying environment, that I also mean that there's more than one type of fear that you can develop. I want you to get out there and start creating until you find something that works for you and get it out in front of people. I feel a very distinct type of unease while playing Dead Space, which is of course miles different than the discomfort that I feel during Little Nightmares. Horror itself may be seen as one genre, but it's more like an umbrella corporation, where many things fall underneath it. That's the thing about art, I suppose. It's easy to identify, but difficult to define. And honestly, what I believe factors into a game's failure to be scary can sometimes lie in its own strengths. Five Nights at Freddy's likely isn't getting any genuine scares out of people by the 6th game in the series, because by that point, you've become desensitized to the robot animal screaming at you. Resident Evil 7 probably stopped being scary once you were able to predict when you would expect to see Jack emerge through the wall, with a pitcher of delicious Kool-Aid for you to drink. Sometimes the game can be really good at eliciting one type of fear from the player, and forget to be any good at anything else. So once you become inoculated to the one thing that the game does really well, you start to see that what you're left with isn't exactly a balanced breakfast. You could ask why I would include a game like FNAF as an example of both what makes a horror game good and what makes one feel stale. The answer to that is simply too much of a good thing. That happens a lot. That's why Sister Location and Help Wanted were both so well received. After the franchise had gone bad, it took something ambitious to shake up the formula and keep it interesting. On the other hand, Resident Evil as a franchise tried to do something very similar with the 4th game, as they felt that the formula had gone rancid. However, they ended up meeting their fate on the path they took to avoid it, leading to 5 and 6 being the most hated games in the series before they had to course correct harder than a comedian in 2020 with the 7th game. Some developers actually pay attention and use the feedback they receive to adapt and grow, whereas some others use it to commit die on their games and then scramble for the reset button. That's the difference between your horror game series being revitalized and actually having players anxious at the thought of what could scare them, or being shot out of the sky because it punched too close to the boulder, or, flew too close to the sun and became a parody of itself. That being said, not every horror game I mention here is a truly terrifying experience, and they don't all have to be, not even the decidedly great ones. In all honesty, and in my humble opinion, all it takes is an unsettling atmosphere, a compelling gameplay loop, and a sympathetic protagonist, or at the very least, a relatable objective. Daniel from Amnesia has all the personality of an unplugged lamp, but escaping the castle and finding some answers is a pretty agreeable goal, I would say. Also, whatever you do, don't be agony. Now, none of this is to say that I have the answer as to what makes a good horror game or that I know how to make one myself. This may come as a surprise to some of you, but I rarely ever know what the hell I'm talking about. However, I do think that any good horror game that has stood the test of time or stood out above its contemporaries has usually had at least one of these strengths and played into them exceptionally well. I think that's the beautiful thing about video games, especially horror games. When you're experiencing it, you know it's fake and you're essentially being manipulated into feeling a certain way. But every so often, one comes along and tricks you in the best way possible, and suddenly you're in the woods looking for pages with a flashlight. Suddenly you're trapped in an office frantically looking at cameras on a monitor. And suddenly you're scared. Thanks for watching my little video. I wanted to do something for Halloween outside of the silly horror reviews that I've been doing, which I probably stopped doing by the time you saw this. There might be a couple more sprinkled throughout the month. We'll see what happens with that. But I wanted to give you this. And I'll also be giving you a Halloween-themed sketch this month. It was kind of difficult to come up with, but, boy out here doing stuff for you as best as possible. Now, if you want to help me be able to sustain this type of content, which is what I really enjoy doing here on the channel, then it would be magnificent if you would support the Patreon or hit the join button and start supporting the channel directly. It would be marvelous these days because if I'm going to be able to continue to raise the quality of content for you guys, I'm going to need a little bit of help. That being said, I'll see you next time. Hey, by the way, if you got to this part of the video, I just want you to go ahead and comment something silly like, just comment the word eggs, and I'll know what you're talking about. The other people won't know, but I'll know. I just wanted to check in with you guys and see, how you've all been doing. I know that this is kind of a crazy year, and this is a bit of a random video to stick this kind of message on, but I figured this one might actually track well, so it'll get in front of a lot of people. I just want to make sure you guys are staying safe, you guys are staying healthy, still, wearing your masks, washing your hands as frequently as possible, still using hand sanitizer, just being safe and being smart, regardless of the powers that be that might tell you that this whole thing, this crazy thing that we're all dealing with, that it's a thing of the past and that it's over now or something like that. That's not the case. And I understand that as a result of what's been happening this year, a lot of you guys might be, a little bit monetarily strapped. So that's, if you can't support the Patreon or join the channel membership, which I'm going to be rolling out very soon, or even if you just don't want to, that's totally fine. I'm not going to try to twist your arm or manipulate you into giving me money. It's totally okay. I just want you to maybe listen to my music, which is on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, Apple Music, Google Play Music, YouTube Music. It's on just about everything. I do have some new music coming out. You just watch the videos, share them around. You don't have to directly come out of your own pocket to support the channel. Just going the extra mile to get my stuff out there to your friends that may not have heard of me yet, or your family, anything like that. That would be totally helpful. I'm doing my best to stay safe and keep bringing you guys good content. I was pretty sick earlier this year, but I got over it. It was not COVID related, trust me. It was not that. And I want to do something for us. I want to do something very special for the channel. If we get to 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year, I will do something very big to round out December. But that's going to depend on you guys. I need you to go therefore and multiply. Just get myself in front of as many people as you can. And we'll see about doing something very, very special for you guys. With all that being said, I'll see you guys very soon.